Hello guys, good evening and welcome back. All right, so in this video I want to show us how to cut our Ankara trouser and of course an Ankara top. So the first thing you need to know is the number of yards to use. Now the yardage will be dependent on your customer's size. So the minimum yardage you need for an adult is 4 yards, while for kids can be 3, 2.5, depends on the size of the kid. So now the first thing I use to cut is my trouser, right? So all you need to do is to fold this piece together. Now folding this piece together will come from the both ends of the fabric. So you make sure you fold this from the both ends of the fabric and align the two edges together this way, and you must make sure you do the whole markings from the back of the fabric, right? Don't chalk the front of your fabric. Your chalking must be done at the back, that's the wrong side, where the blue line here is the real, the blue edge is the real front. So chalk the back. So after this, once you have taken your time to arrange the whole fabric this way, it's advisable you iron. Now the reason for your ironing is to make sure you remove any rumples that will appear on the fabric. Now these rumples can increase or reduce your measurements as the case may be. So once you want to cut, make sure there are no rumples on the fabric. You iron them out properly. Then after which, you also make sure that the prints on the fabric are facing upright. Now if the fabric has an image of a church, a building, anything image, whether human being or inanimate object, you need to be careful where it's facing. So I have a trick where my left hand side serves as my upside and where the right serves as the down part of my outfit. So if you have any similar image like that, so you start to place it in that direction to make them face accordingly as I have explained, right? So after that, now the next you will do is to mark out your baselines. Now before we proceed, I believe most of us might have been eager to learn this properly. Now the easiest thing I will tell us are to get the basic tools, which I will show us in this video. Now these tools are our straight ruler, our transparent ruler, which can still serve in place of this, or this can serve as well in place of this. Now the next is our hip curve. This one I have here, our hip curve. Then after this, now the next we have is my armhole curve, which is this, and then after this your straight ruler. So once you get two of these, now the next we will do is to mark out your baselines. So you're going to mark out your baseline in this form. Now this baseline we have marked out is to make sure you remove any rumples, so any unevenness at the base, and as well make sure as well you also mark out the base at the sides or the sidelines. Now make sure you don't mark out more than half an inch or thereabout, depending on how uneven the size might be. So after this, once you have marked them out in this form, now the next thing to do is to to mark 2 inches here. Now these 2 inches serves you for the folding or the hemming, which is not part of the trouser length, right? Then after which you connect the lines in this form, then the extent of the line will go in a considerable length, which will help for your drafting. So after this, now the next you will do is to apply your customer's trouser length. Now don't forget that you need to learn how to measure your customer rightly. So I think I will drop a link of my measurement video in the description box of this video for you to be able to go and watch how to take an appropriate measurement of your customer. So the length of my customer I have is 41. So from that 2 inches, you mark 41 inches. which is now going to be marked here, right? Then after this, the next we will do is to mark this part as well. Then it is advisable you mark the line twice, meaning apply the length twice in order for you to have a straight line at the waist region. Then after that, you now derive your crouch, which as well I have made a video on how to take your crouch for all outfits you are making. So if you haven't watched it, please kindly search the video on how to calculate your crouch on my channel. You will see a well-detailed video on how to calculate your crouch of your customer. Then after which, now the hip I have is a hip of 42. With the help of the formula I use, which states that divide 42 by 4, you have 10.5. Now consider the fact that the length is above 39 inches. I will not deduct anything. I will mark 10.5 as well for my crouch position. Then after that, this becomes my crouch. I will extend my line in this form. Then after this, I will now apply my hip measurement on that direction. Then hip is 42, which is 10.5. I will mark 10.5 here and add extra 2 inches. Now this 2 inches is a must add for all trousers. Then after that, I go over to my waistline. Now my waist I have is 34. Now divide 32 waist. Now 32 by 4 is 8. You mark 8 inches here and then add extra 1 inch. You must add 1 inch only on the waist region. You can't add 2 or 3 there. Add 1. Then connect the 1 inch allowance on the waist to the real hip point or hip position. Then after that, you are going to come up here by 2 inches. Come up here by 2 inches and mark 0.5 in a diagonal form this way. And then with the help of your armhole curve, place in this format and then connect the 2 inches here, half inch here, and the 2 inches up. And then after that, the next thing we do is to slope the waist by half an inch. Now sloping means come down by half an inch, which is a must for all our male outfits. Then connect the lines as shown. Then after that, come to the ankle point and then come in by 1.5 minimum, but the maximum you can go in is 2 inches. Then after that, you connect the lines coming out in this form and then slope it accurately to your crotch depth, which is the 10.5 inch you marked, and then connect in this form. Then after that, apply your ankle. Ankle we have is 13.5. So in such situations, I use 7, that's 14 to cut. Then while closing, I am closed at 14. I close at 13.5 rather. So connect the lines to come up straight this way. And then after which, you use your hip curve, place in this form, connect this point to this point, and then pointing this hip curve to the line that came up from the ankle, and then flush it up to this point, and then connect as shown. Now make sure that the lines are corresponding. There will be no sharp edge or there will be no sharp corner here. Now if you notice, I do not make use of my laps and my knee in cutting. I only use my waist, my hip, and my ankle, and then my trouser length. Now the reason for this is because once your hip is correct, ankle is correct, your lap and knee must fall in. So the lap we have here is a lap of 22. So let's cross check if the lap is inside our drafting. So the lap of 22 divided by 2, you have it to be 11, right? So 11. So let's check if 11 is inside here. 11 is inside our hip measurement plus extra 2 inches. So invariably, in all standard divisions and cutting and measurement, it simply means that if your hip measurement is rightfully measured and you divide your hip by 4, it must be either bigger or exact of your lap measurement divided by 2, right? So if your hip is 40 over 4 is 10 plus 2 is 12, that means that your lap should be within 12 range. That's 24 inches, 23 inches, or 22.5. There are no occasion should your lap be bigger than your hip over 4 plus extra 2. The worst scenario you will have is to have your lap and your lap measurement being equal with your hip over 4 plus extra 2. In such situations, it's still correct and don't bother. So, but what should you then do? Don't forget that the back panel will be bigger by 2 inches. So the back panel has given the front allowance needed for the joining or the sewing aspect. Now for the knee positions, now how then do we get our knee point? Now convention will tell you that from your waistline to 18 inches down, sorry, to 21 inches down is your knee point. So you measure from your waistline 21 inches down to derive your knee point. So let's take our knee. The knee we have is a knee measurement of 16. 16 by 2 is 8, right? So you measure 8 at this point to cross check if the 8 is inside your curvy line. So what happens when the 8 is outside the line? It is either your knee is wrong or your measurement is wrong. So in such situations, you make some adjustments where needed. So this is one of the simplest ways you can use to cut the trouser, and I call this method the simple line method, meaning the lines are simple, no much curves, no much extra lines. It's as simple as ABCD. So having seen this now the next I will show you guys is as well the cutting procedures, right? So let's cut and see. So now, as you can see, we have finished cutting the front panel. It's now time for us to cut the back panel. So all you need to do is to stretch out the fabric to come forward to you, and then you are going to return this trouser panel this other way around. Now the reason for this is to make sure that the bigger area is well utilized, so you don't need to waste fabric, right? But then make sure that before you do this, you must have cross-checked if the fabric has prints or designs on it. If it has prints or designs on it, please don't turn the fabric. You are meant to leave the fabric that way, and then you proceed with your cutting in that same direction you used when So now the band measurement we have here is 4.5 inches width, and the length we have here is going to be divided or determined by the customer's waist measurement over 2, because I have the two bands placed in this form. So you cut in this form, and then after that, the next you will have here is your flap. Now, which the measurement for the flap is 2.5 inches width, or the maximum of 3 inches width, and then you cut out in this form. Now the length we depended as well on the crotch depth we had. So the crotch depth we had was the length is 3 inches here, and the depth of here is 10 inches, which is still okay for me. Now after this, you now cut your facing, your pocket facing, right? So the measurement is for the facing is 4 inches width by 9 to 10 inches depth as well. So make sure that's the minimum measurement you can have, right? So but the measurement should not be longer than the pocketing, which I also show us when we get to the level of sewing. So this is for the components. Now the next thing to do is to cut the loop, the belt loop. So the belt loop measurement we are going to cut will be 1.5 inches belt loop by the length of 24. There are 6 belt loops in the trouser, so we are going to cut 1.5 inches width by the length of 24, right? So because the fabric is short, so I will have you to be in 2 pieces. So 1.5 inch width by the length of 24. So this is going to be okay for me. This is 26. I'm okay with that. So you also mark to differentiate the front from the back. So the last thing to cut is the back pocket, which will be cut before we start cutting, after we have finished cutting our top. Now the reason for this is to make sure we make maximum use of our fabric for us not to have any wastage. So having said that, now this will be the video on the trouser cutting. The next you will see is how to cut the top. Thank you guys for watching. See you in my next video.